Somehow, I doubt it. Yesterday, I asked Snerdley if he had seen The Newsroom on HBO. He said he hadn't, and furthermore, he hadn't even heard of it, which I totally understand. It's an HBO show. It started Sunday night, airs at 10 o'clock. It's 1 hour. It's Aaron Sorkin' latest foray into series TV. Aaron Sorkin wrote The West Wing. And important to remember is that many liberals who live in fantasy land really ended up believing that the West Wing was the real presidency. They were so disheartened, so unhappy with Clinton that Martin Sheen actually became the president. So I decided I was going to watch this thing because I'd read all the previews. And what's fascinating about the previews, the mainstream media hates this show. Well, I wouldn't say they hate it, but they don't like it. They've been panning it. They've been ripping it to shreds. So it kind of intrigued me. I want to find out what is it about it they don't like. So I watched it last night, and I don't want to try to summarize the entire 1 hour show. It's basically about an anchor played by Jeff Daniels, who's from the old school, who will not tell a soul what his political opinions on anything are. His objectivity, and the fact that the audience has no idea what he thinks, is his coin of the realm. In a world where all of journalism is becoming opinionated. So he's participating in a forum on journalism at Northwestern University. And they've got a liberal woman, a conservative guy, moderator, and Jeff Daniels as a representative of the news media. And they ask him questions, and he gives silly answers like, what do you think of health care? I don't know how the Jets going to do this year, is his answer. So they struggle. They try to get this guy. Give us your opinion on something. Would you please show us your human side? So this little college co-ed sheepishly walks to the microphone. Mr. McAvoy, what is Will McAvoy, whatever character, Mr. Whatever, will you tell me, will you explain to me why America is the greatest country in the world? And he gives a couple of offhanded non-answers and is staring at somebody in the audience he thinks is an old girlfriend who's flashing him signs, telling him what to say. One sign says, "It isn't." Anyway, he finally launches into this diatribe about how America is not a great country. It's not the greatest. It's not great at all. And he cites a bunch of statistics that are wrong. Like, for example, that we are 187th in the world in infant mortality. That's just bogus, but liberals believe it. So he gives rhyme and verse why this country sucks, why it's not the greatest country on earth, and it shocks everybody at his network. They can't believe it, his cable news network. He goes on vacation after this appearance, comes back. The news director has fired his staff. They've hired a new executive producer for his show, which is his old girlfriend. None of this is known to him. He comes back. He's got a brand new show based on him being opinionated. So that's basically the show. With the relationship stuff with the ex-girlfriend who's now the executive producer tossed in. And what they're doing with this show is going back. They're taking issues that have happened and covering them as the liberals wish they had. Last night's episode was about the BP oil spill. And Aaron Sorkin is a squirrely liberal. He's miserably unhappy liberal. And he's written a show here that's essentially, have you ever been in an argument with somebody when it's over, you think about all the things you should have said, all the things you could have said, but didn't think of at the time? That's what this show is. Go back, take the BP oil spill, and do a newscast of what you should have done as a liberal when it happened instead of what did happen. as a means of rewriting history for your delusional liberal audience. And that's what I thought when I'm watching this thing last night. This is amazing. They're going back. They're doing the BP oil spill. They're creaming Halliburton in this show last night for bad concrete. They're creaming BP, which they did. Anyway, they're creaming everybody. And they're throwing every liberal cliche you can imagine into this global warming, economic destruction, global climate destruction. But not as it actually happened, but as it would have happened if Sorkin had been running a news network at the time. If liberals had been true to themselves. So I get up today, and I'm in the midst of doing show prep, and I come across a review of the program by somebody I've never heard of at a website I've never heard of, which doesn't mean anything. It's called Sultan Knish, blogspot.com. And the guy who wrote the review is Daniel Greenfield. And the headline of his review is Why the Newsroom is Good News for Republicans. And let me share with you some excerpts. The last time Aaron Sorkin had a high-profile political TV show, liberals used it to cope with the decline and fall of the Clinton presidency and the long winter of the Bush years. The West Wing was a coping mechanism for the death of a liberal dream. And so is the newsroom. The newsroom is an escape into fantasy to avoid dealing with the harsh reality that liberals are imploding. On an episode of Seinfeld, for example, George is stung by an insult, but is unable to think of a retort, so he spends days trying to come up with the perfect comeback until he finally thinks of it and travels around the country to get the chance to deliver it. The newsroom set in the past and jumping in right before the political balance tilted toward the Republicans in the midterm elections is the same thing. The midterm elections 2010 really shocked them. It really sent them for a loop. Remember that movie that George Clooney was in, The Ides of March, and I told you that the first 30 minutes of that movie is now I'm having a mental block. Help me out, Sturdley. What is some phrase I came up with or some way I described something that to me was flippant? Now you see it, now you don't comment. It really bugged them. They spent 30 minutes on this in this Clooney show. It's a political show about a candidate, a mayor in Ohio running for re-election or a governor. Damn it, I can't. Do you remember what it is? Somebody will remind me. Anyway, I was stunned. I'm watching this TV show. I had no idea the left was so irritated by that comment of mine. Well, the same thing here. The 2010 midterm Operation Chaos. That's what they were. The Operation Chaos. It wasn't a flippant comment. It was my attempt to get Hillary votes during the Democrat primary. And they spend the first 30 minutes of this Clooney movie on Operation Chaos, which told me, man, this really bugged them, that I was out there encouraging Republicans to re-register as Democrats and vote for Hillary in the primary, just keep that primary going, keep it interesting for us. 2010 midterms had the same effect on them. So Sorkin's gone back and done this show prior to the midterms because it just trying to recreate reality here so it's not as devastating to them. The newsroom is set in the past, and it jumps in right before the political balance tilted toward the Republicans in the midterms. It's the same thing. The newsroom is Aaron Sorkin's sad attempt. Now, wait, folks, now stick with me. This is not about, where this is going is not about a TV show. This is a teachable moment about liberals and liberalism and where they are and how messed up they are. That's what this is about. So stick with me on this. I'm not trying to get you to watch this show. That's not the point. The newsroom is Sorkin's. The point of this is to tell you in what really horrible shape liberalism is in this country. And they are the ones who are telling us that. Not that we have to figure it out. This show is evidence that they are imploding, is the point here. So this is, stick with me. The newsroom is Aaron Sorkin's sad attempt to win an argument by rewriting history, coming up with all the comebacks his side couldn't think of 2 years ago. It's the sad, and pathetic spectacle of an ideology creating its own fantasy version of its own reality in which it won the argument, and then lives in the fantasy, lives in the middle of the lie. Now, unlike the West Wing, the newsroom is not set in an alternate world in which the universe innately favors liberals. Instead, the newsroom is set in an alternate version of the past in which liberals were smarter than they really were and won all the arguments that they actually ended up losing. The existence of the newsroom is the greatest possible concession that the liberals lost the argument and are continuing to lose it. There's no reason for Republicans to look down on this show. It's a safer outlet for liberal anger than Occupy Wall Street. It's a miniature universe in which they're smarter, they are nobler, and they are better than everybody else. Children have fantasy worlds like that. There's no reason that liberals shouldn't, too. Not only does it give them the security of believing that they really were superior, but it prevents them from learning any useful lessons from their defeat. Because if they're going to sit there and lie to themselves and tell them they actually won and they actually were smarter, it can't help them. It's never a bad thing when your enemies escape into a delusional state to a world of their making in which they are in complete control of everything. It makes it more likely that they will cede at least some control over the real world. And it's not only an admission of defeat, but of emotional and mental fragility. Adults don't need to build fantasy worlds to escape the effects of their failures or their precious self-esteem. That's for overgrown children who are used to getting trophies for just showing up. Now, using my empathy, I know some of you say, what do you mean they're losing? Isn't Obama president? Didn't the Supreme Court going their way? Every election since Obama won and was inaugurated, they've lost every meaningful national election. They lost Wisconsin. The unions lost big. Where the Republicans stand up and fight, the liberals lose. They lost the 2010 midterms. They're going to lose in November. They are losing with the American people. That is why Obama has to rule the way he is. The American people don't support spitting on the Constitution. The American people do not support rampant, open border, no controls whatsoever immigration into Arizona. Not a majority. The newsroom is the kid that everyone hated, losing his race for class president and creating a fantasy world in which he won the election and everybody cheered his obnoxious tantrums. May not be good for him, but it's good for us because it means he hasn't learned to win. All that he's learned to do is manage the emotional experience of defeat through delusional tantrums of superiority. Yep. Exactly who they are. Propaganda that tells you that you won when you actually lost is corrosive. It inhibits any serious self-evaluation. Without some soul-searching and error-checking, the same mistakes are bound to be repeated over and over again. Look, folks, have you seen the CNN audience? 54,000 people? 54,000 people. 25:54, 10 o'clock at night. 54,000. It's a test pattern. We've got that many at the corner 5th and 57th in New York. Have you seen MSNBC? It's an absolute joke. Everybody in the news media is laughing. MSNBC is a joke, and they don't have any audience. Have you seen what's happening in New York Times ad revenue? They're losing readership. They're losing money big time. Just canned their president because Little Pinch's girlfriend doesn't like her. Have you seen what's happening to American newspaper? They're losing is the point. I got to take a break. I'm only halfway through this. Sit tight.